All right, good afternoon. I will start off with a couple of statements and then an update on Yemen. The Secretary General welcomes the adoption by the General Assembly of the Global Compact for a safe, orderly, and regular migration. The compact is a non-legally binding agreement that reaffirms the foundation principle of our global community, including national sovereignty, universal human rights, while pointing the way towards a humane and sensible action to benefit countries of origin, transit, and destination, as well as the migrants themselves. He said that at a time when international cooperation is more important than ever, this new global compact provides a platform for precisely that. He calls for greater solidarity with migrants in situations of appalling vulnerability and abuse. The compact underscores the need to anticipate future trends from labor markets to the impacts of climate change. And it also highlights the imperative of devising more legal pathways for migration, which would help crack down on trafficking and exploitation. The Secretary General thanks all those who have helped to bring this landmark step to fruition: the current President of the General Assembly and her predecessor, the co-facilitators, his special representative, Louise Arbour, and the UN's many partners, including civil society, diaspora communities, the private sector, trade unions, academic experts, municipal leaders, and, of course, migrants themselves. He also welcomes the overwhelming global support for this compact and hopes that those countries that have chosen to remain outside of the process will come to see the compact's value and join this venture. The Secretary General said leadership will be crucial in bringing the compact to life and in avoiding the myths and disparaging discourse that have become all too frequent. The newly established United Nations Migration Network stands ready to support member states and all our partners as we strive together in a spirit of respect and common purpose to make migration work for all. His statement is now available online. I also have a statement on Guatemala. The Secretary General regrets the government of Guatemala. Sorry, don't run. It's okay. What am I reading here? Okay. I apparently do not have a statement on Guatemala. There you go. The beauty of live television. Okay. Back to our regular programming. I'll have an update for you on Yemen. General Patrick Cammert and members of the Redeployment Coordination Committee, the RCC, met today at UN headquarters through video and telephone conference and discussed the general outlines of work of the committee. The RCC members all expressed support for the work of the United Nations and to General Cammert and his team. The RCC will adopt a code of conduct based on the Hodeidah Agreement to be the basis of its work. General Cammert reiterated the commitment of the UN to help the parties fulfill their obligations and commitments and to help the parties to de-escalate tensions. He highlighted the primacy of humanitarian goal of the ceasefire and the importance of securing unhindered flow of humanitarian aid. General Cammert and the members of the committee will stay in close contact in the coming days until the committee convenes a meeting in Hodeidah as soon as possible, as per the request of the General. Both parties remain constructively engaged with the work of the committee and vow to facilitate the work of the committee in good faith and to cooperate with the implementation of the Hodeidah Agreement. General Cammert will travel on Thursday to Amman in Jordan with a small initial advance team, and he will then travel onwards to Sana'a and Hodeidah. Back here, the Security Council, as you will see, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the Undersecretary General for Peacekeeping Operations, briefed the Security Council this morning on Israel's Operation Northern Shield to uncover and disable tunnels believed to cross the blue line from Lebanon into Israel, which has been going on for 2 weeks. During this period, he said the UN peacekeeping force UNIFIL carried out a series of technical visits at suspected tunnel sites identified by the Israeli Defense Forces near the blue line. Based on its own finding, the UN confirmed the existence of 4 tunnels south of the blue line. UNIFIL technical assessments, he added, have further determined that at least 2 of these tunnels cross the blue line and constitute a violation of Security Council Resolution 1701. Mr. Lacroix said that UNIFIL is acting judiciously to complete its investigation of the tunnels with technical teams on the ground and to work with both parties to ensure that any tunnels that are in violation of 1701 are disabled decisively and safely. UNIFIL has requested the Lebanese authorities to work with the mission to identify and disable any tunnels crossing the Blue Line from Lebanon. And the Undersecretary General also commended both the Israeli Defense Forces and the Lebanese Armed Forces for their stated commitment to continue to use liaison and coordination arrangements established by the UN and their attention to maintain the prevailing calm along the Blue Line and avoid any escalation. The potential for miscalculation, however, cannot be underestimated, Mr. Lacroix warned. Our colleagues at the World Food Programme tell us that they are facing severe funding shortfall that will impact some 193,000 of the poorest people in the occupied Palestinian territories, both in the West Bank and Gaza. As WFP prioritizes operations based on available funds, 27,000 people in the West Bank stand to receive no further assistance, while the rest are to receive only 80% of the monthly entitlement. Those cuts will go into effect as of January 1st. WFP is, of course, very concerned that these cuts may have a devastating effect on the food security, livelihoods, and welfare of the people it serves in Palestine. WFP needs $57 million to maintain the current level of support to 360,000 people in 2019. In the absence of additional contributions, further cuts in assistance will have to be made. Food insecurity is on the rise, affecting 1/3 of the Palestine population, in the worst in Gaza, where nearly 70% of the population is food insecure. And our humanitarian colleagues tell us that Afghanistan aid organizations, Herat City, have started distributing food and non-food items to displaced people who have been affected by drought. As part of the ongoing full-scale drought response, the World Food Programme and its partners reached nearly 287,000 affected people from the 6th to the 12th of December with food and cash assistance in rural and urban areas in 11 provinces. In the past week, 236,000 people affected by conflict and drought received humanitarian assistance, including cash, food, hygiene kits, emergency household items, emergency shelter, and safe drinking water. And on the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a new report has found that hundreds of extrajudicial killings and cases of torture and sexual violence against civilians have been documented in the past 2 years in North Kivu province. The number of human rights violations account for 1/3 of all such violations documented in the entire country. The security and humanitarian situation in North Kivu steadily deteriorated between January 2017 and the 2018, resulting from more armed groups fighting against both security forces and amongst themselves to gain control over territory and natural resources. The new report found that women and children are often kidnapped and frequently for the purpose of sexual exploitation, with rapes and gang rapes committed both by armed groups and by the army. Children are also subject to indoctrination by armed groups and forced to serve as child soldiers. And a new study released by the UN Refugee Agency and the OECD shows that more refugees are being helped by family work and study permits than by resettlement schemes in the last 8 years. Some 560,000 people from Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Eritrea entered OECD countries through these methods, compared to 400,000 through resettlement schemes. And after I'm done, I will be joined by Murad Waba, Director of the UN Development Programme's Regional Bureau for Arab States, along with Osako Okai, Director of UNDP's Crisis Bureau, and Ursula Mueller, the Deputy Emergency Relief Coordinator, and they will be here to brief you on their recent trip to Libya. And tomorrow I will be joined by Ibrahim Thiaw, the Special Advisor of the Secretary General for the Sahel, who will speak to you about the Sahel. All right, thank you for paying attention. Mr. Bays and Mr. Abadi.
President Trump is saying that, although there is some confusion around this, that he is pulling U.S. troops out of Syria. Two questions related to that. Does the Secretary General believe ISIL in Syria has now been defeated? And secondly, is the Secretary General concerned that there will now be ungoverned territory in that part of Syria, and that could cause concerns politically for the security situation and for the delivery of humanitarian aid?
Look, it's a lot of coulds and hypotheticals right now. Our focus, and the Secretary General's focus, remains on the peace process, the political process that is being UN-led by Mr. de Mistura and then Mr. Peterson. That remains our focus. Peace remains our focus. As for ISIL, I think there are relevant Security Council reports to that matter, and I will leave it at that. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stéphane. Does the text of the Global Compact as adopted by the G8 today include in its title the famous city of Marrakesh?
Does it?
If it does,
I don't believe it does. We can check. It's a public document. I don't know if it does, and I don't think it does. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you. The Nigerian military suspended the operation of UNICEF in the northeast on Monday, and it was later reversed. I want to know, the United Nations play any role at any level to reverse the expulsion?
Contacts, I'm sure, were had at the local level between UNICEF and the relevant representatives in Nigeria. Yep.
Thank you, Stéphane. I'd like to ask about report of diplomatic cables breach reported by New York Times today. And it is mostly about the diplomatic cables of European unions. But part of that article says that also UN system suffered the hacking by same group. And the materials exposed contains the record of meeting between Secretary General and some Asian countries' leaders. Can you confirm that?
No, I'm not able to. I mean, we're aware of these reports. We don't publicly report on any data breaches. What I can tell you is that, from what I've read of the article, these seems to be from a few years ago, and that our systems are constantly being upgraded and strengthened. Yes, Stefano.
Yes, two questions. One is about the Global Compact. Did the Secretary General in the final vote see anything, any news of who abstained instead to vote against or something? Any reaction on the final count?
What the Secretary General saw was a compact adopted by an overwhelming number of member states of this organization. And as he said, the door remains open for those who have chosen not to join this document, which, as we have said about 1,001 times, is not legally binding.
And the second question is on the release today and yesterday by Reporters Without Borders and Committee to Protect Journalists. On their report, they say that this year was a really, really bad year for journalists. And what is interesting is they reading on those reports, especially Committee to Protect Journalists, it looks like they find responsibility of the bad year also certain policy by government, like United States government, in the person of the president, there was certain speech, let's say, journalist, enemy of the people, and so on, made the situation even worse. What is the reaction? What did the Secretary General think about it?
I would refer you to the very strong message the Secretary General issued on the issue of impunity against violence against journalists. The Secretary General feels that, as a matter of principle, all governments have a responsibility to ensure that journalists are able to conduct their work freely and safely. Mr. Bays.
You started reading what sounded like a hard-hitting statement on Guatemala. You're right to withdraw it, but can we ask you what is your position on Guatemala withdrawing the diplomatic credentials of those investigators?
I think my position is about to be given to me shortly. So, yes, Stefano. my position was given, then withdrawn. So hopefully I'll be given one soon. Yes.
On the other issue that you mentioned, the Security Council on the situation in the border between Lebanon and Israel, it looked in reading a statement that also was sent to us by the Israeli ambassador Dan. It looks like, I mean, I read some criticism in the way that UNIFIL, the UN, reacted when it looks like they didn't do things fast enough or something didn't go the way it should have gone. That's the way I read it. How is what the Secretary General thinks of the way UNIFIL acted in this situation?
I think UNIFIL reacted very thoroughly in both ensuring that the coordination mechanisms between the IDF and the LAF worked, and it does. The Force Commander General Cole went to Israel, met with Israeli counterparts with the IDF, went to visit Israel's northern border, got the information he needed to have, then met with Lebanese counterparts, visited areas along the Blue Line, and we identified the tunnels as reported by Mr. Lacroix and reported it as a violation of the Security Council Resolution 1701, which is exactly what they were supposed to do. Ms. Fasulo, and then we'll go to our guests.
Thank you, Stéphane. This is just a housekeeping issue. You had mentioned that the SG was planning to give a press conference,
yes,
I believe in
January.
Is there a sense of when?
Yeah, probably around the 16th or somewhere along those that date. But he has confirmed it to me, so hopefully it will not be like the Guatemala statement. I will get our guests, and then we'll hear from Monica. So stand by, please.